Welcome to the Haven Collective. I'm J.R. Foresteros, and here is this week's Beacon Bit. This week we're talking about Isaiah's call narrative to be a prophet that takes place in Isaiah chapter 6. And to do that, we really need to talk about a new country album that dropped recently. Of course, I'm talking about Beyonce's Cowboy Carter. Now, one of the most interesting tracks, I think, on the new album is her cover of Dolly Parton's Jolene, because it's not exactly a cover. It's honestly, I think, more like a sort of sample that you would hear on a traditional hip-hop album. Because if you know anything about Dolly Parton's Jolene, it is a song where Dolly plays a woman who is singing and addressing another woman named Jolene who has designs on her partner, on Dolly's partner. And so Dolly is begging Jolene, please, 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 whatever you do, don't take my man away from me. On Cowboy Carter, this song is introduced by a voicemail from Dolly Parton addressing Beyonce and referencing the infamous Becky with the good hair that Beyonce first put on blast on her Lemonade album, a woman who allegedly had an affair with Beyonce's husband, Jay-Z. And on her version of Jolene, though it has the same kinds of musical stylings, the same sort of chord structure, the same hook, it has a very different lyrical content when it comes to the verses. Beyonce's Jolene is her warning this woman that no matter what she does, she will never be able to take Beyonce's man away from her. So it sort of flips over what the original song was. And that's why I said it's not a cover as much as I think it's more of like a sample or almost like a remake. It's an incredibly interesting move for Beyonce to make because, of course, when she released Cowboy Carter, it made a lot of headlines that Beyonce, one of the best-selling artists in the entire world, one of the most admired artists in the entire world, who's primarily known in the hip-hop and R&B sector, made a country album. Country music, of course, being primarily a genre known to be populated by white musicians. And so it caused all kinds of stir. And by not only covering Jolene, but making it her own, Beyonce did two things simultaneously that, believe it or not, have a lot of bearing on how we understand what was going on in Isaiah chapter 6. First of all, by taking an undisputed country classic and covering it, not only covering it, but covering it with the blessing of the original artist, country music superstar and godmother Dolly Parton, Beyonce establishes herself as someone who belongs in the country music genre. She has been welcomed in and anointed by none other than Dolly herself. So by doing Jolene, she's saying, I belong here. I am part of this community. But then by doing her own thing with it, not just changing it a little bit musically, but changing it conceptually, she's marking it out as her own distinct song as a black woman performing a country song. And so she's not only saying, hey, this is where I belong, but she's also saying, I am doing something unique and I am doing something different. Those two things are simultaneously true of the song Jolene, and I think that's why it's one of the most important songs on Cowboy Carter. Though, let's be honest, no one tunes into me for my country music hot takes, so do with that what you will. What I do think is so interesting about it is how it helps us understand Isaiah chapter 6. This is the prophet's call narrative. This is his story of how he became a prophet. And so he puts the story in the throne room of heaven where Yahweh, the God of Israel and Judah, is on the throne. And all of the imagery he uses is imagery that an ancient Jewish person would have well understood. He's using the language of their God. And in fact, he sets the whole story in the temple itself. So Isaiah is making it clear that he belongs to this community, that he has a right to speak within and to this community. At the same time, he's putting his own spin on it. He's making it something that is distinctly his for his particular time and his particular place. And so by doing that, Isaiah is marking out this as his own message and his own story and his own particular calling. These two features are something we see again and again and again in prophetic call narratives. It's important that our calling be grounded in the people of God, who we are, and again, addressing that we are not just a lone individual, but we are part of a community that extends across the world and back through time. That we are coherent with them, that we speak the same language, that we're participating in the same ongoing endeavor. At the same time, there is a particular calling for our particular time and our particular place. Beyonce can't sing Jolene the way Dolly did, and Dolly can't sing Jolene the way Beyonce does. They both have to have their own version of the song because they're two different people in two different times and places. That's true for us too, and with these calling narratives. We belong in our time and place, and yet we're participating in the long history of God. So in your beacons this week, we're going to talk about calling because we've been talking this whole month about change at a personal level, about change at a societal, cultural, national, even global level. And God has a particular calling for you and a particular calling for me. And I wonder what it would sound like if you wrote your own call story. If you sort of did with Isaiah's call story what Beyonce did with Jolene, where you took it and made it your own. You borrowed some of the language and the imagery that are long have been part of the people of God. You know, the throne room in the center, the cherubim and seraphim surrounding it, and then making it your own. I think the way Isaiah did that in a particular way was that he lived in a time where it seemed like people were far from God. And so he included this particular act of confession and repentance and a way that God cleansed him and made him whole. That mattered to his people in his time and place. What is God calling you to? What is God calling us to? I can't wait to have that conversation with our beacons, and I hope before then you spend some time thinking about what your call story looks like. We'll see you soon.